Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if being a good person in one way automatically makes you good in another way, or if being bad in one area just makes you worse all around? This fascinating new study dives deep into what we actually believe about how our positive and negative character traits, our virtues and vices, are connected. So, scientists are asking some really big questions here. Do you think that if you become more honest, you'll naturally become more compassionate too? Or maybe if you are a bit lazy, does that make you more likely to be a coward? People have lots of ideas about this, and this research wanted to map it all out. They looked at 15 different virtues like honesty, compassion, and patience, and 13 different vices like cruelty, greed, and laziness. One idea, called the Independence hypothesis, is that these traits don't really affect each other. You can be super honest without it changing how patient you are at all. Then there is the trade-off hypothesis. This is the idea that improving one virtue might actually make another virtue worse. Think about that classic dilemma. Should you be brutally honest or kind and perhaps a bit dishonest to spare someone's feelings? Some people might believe that if you become super honest, you might become less compassionate, or vice versa. And finally, the facilitation hypothesis. This suggests that virtues help each other out. If you become more patient, it might make it easier to be more forgiving. Or if you improve one virtue, it might automatically boost others. And for vices, it might work the other way around. If you get more greedy, maybe you also get more manipulative. Now, some thinkers have even proposed the idea of master virtues. These would be like the ultimate virtue that, if you improve it, just cascades and makes all your other virtues better. Think of things like self-control, humility, or gratitude. But the researchers here wanted to see what regular people actually believe. Do we think there is one single trait that unlocks all the others? They also wondered if our beliefs about virtues are different from our beliefs about vices. For example, maybe we think that if someone is really bad in one way, it has a bigger impact on other negative traits than if someone is really good in one way. It affects other positive traits. You know, that old saying, bad is stronger than good. So, across 4 studies, they systematically asked people about these connections. They wanted to see if people believed in the facilitation hypothesis, the trade-off hypothesis, or the independence hypothesis. They also looked specifically for evidence of these master virtues or master vices that have a disproportionate impact. And an interesting third part was seeing if these beliefs influenced what traits people actually wanted to improve in themselves. How did they do it? Well, they got a lot of people to fill out surveys. In the first study, they focused on how improving one virtue affected other virtues. In the second, they looked at how making one vice worse affected other vices. Then, in the third and fourth studies, they looked at how virtues affected vices and vice versa. They presented different virtues and vices and asked participants to rate on a scale how much improving one trait would affect another. They used first-person perspectives for most studies, asking if I became more X, how would that affect me being Y? And then a third-person perspective in one study, asking about an average person. So, what did they find? Drumroll, please. The overwhelming winning hypothesis was facilitation. People generally believe that improving a virtue helps other virtues, and making a vice worse makes other vices worse. For example, in study 1, asking about virtues affecting other virtues. Nearly 92% of the relationships showed a significant facilitation effect, meaning people believed getting better at one virtue would make them better at others. Interestingly, there was also evidence that bad is stronger than good. When people thought about vices affecting virtues, those effects were perceived as stronger than when virtues affected vices. Also, people seemed to have more differentiated beliefs about vices than virtues. This means they saw more complex, varied connections between different ways of being bad. Compared to different ways of being good, scroll figure 1 mean beliefs about the interdependence of virtues on virtues. Study 1, panel A, and vices on vices, study 2, panel B. From a first-person perspective, sit or scroll. Looking at these cool visualizations, you can see the patterns. The circles show the average belief. The bigger and darker the circle, the stronger the perceived connection. In the virtue connections, most of them are pretty large and noticeable, showing lots of facilitation. For vice-vice connections, there is also a lot of facilitation. But you start to see some smaller circles and even some negative connections, suggesting trade-offs or less predictable outcomes. Now, a natural question is, does this just mean people have a halo effect? You know, if someone is good at one thing, we assume they're good at everything. To test this, the researchers asked people how improving virtues would affect things like athleticism or physical attractiveness. While there was a small halo effect, it was much weaker than the belief that improving virtues would improve other virtues. So, it is not just a simple halo effect. People have more specific ideas about how moral traits influence each other. Scroll table S12 trait pairs with potential conceptual overlap that were excluded in robustness check analysis. Scroll, they also checked if their results were just due to picking traits that sounded similar, like compassion and considerateness. They reran their analysis, leaving out pairs of traits that might overlap, and found the main results stayed pretty much the same. Which is good because it means their findings aren't just an artifact of the specific words they used. Scroll, figure 4. Script plots showing mean interdependent scores for each virtue or vice. Studies 14 scroll. What about those master virtues? Were there any traits that people thought had a superpowered impact on all the others? Sadly, not for virtues. The study suggested that while some virtues were a bit more impactful than others, there wasn't really a single master virtue that stood out overwhelmingly. However, for vices, there was more of a pattern. Cruelty and to some extent greed were seen as master vices. This means people believed that becoming more cruel or greedy had a disproportionately negative impact on other character traits. On the flip side, things like courage, honesty, and loyalty were often seen as unmasterful virtues, meaning improving them didn't seem to have a huge ripple effect on other virtues. This finding about facilitation is really interesting because a lot of psychology research focuses on moral dilemmas and trade-offs. Think about those classic trolley problems. But this study suggests that when we think about character in a more general way, we tend to see virtues as helping each other grow, rather than getting in each other's way. The trade-offs we see in specific situations might not represent our general beliefs about trait development. The researchers also noticed something important between how important a trait is and how interdependent it is. For example, honesty is often considered super important for judging someone's character. But in this study, honesty wasn't seen as particularly interdependent with other virtues. Compassion, on the other hand, was seen as highly interdependent. And it is also important. But for some traits, like gratitude, they were seen as highly interdependent, but not necessarily ranked as the most important for overall character judgment. This suggests that what makes a trait important to us might be more than just how connected it is to other traits. As we touched on earlier, there were some key differences between how people viewed vices and virtues. The effect of vices on virtues was seen as stronger than the effect of virtues on vices. And people's beliefs about vices were more nuanced or differentiated than their beliefs about virtues. This really suggests that we have different mental models for good and bad traits. An interesting part of the study looked at whether believing a trait was highly interdependent would make people want to change it more. For virtues, it seemed like if people believed improving a virtue would have a big positive impact on other virtues, they were more motivated to improve it. But for vices, it was more mixed. Sometimes people were even less interested in improving vices that they saw as highly interdependent. Perhaps highly interdependent vices feel more entrenched and harder to change, which might discourage people from wanting to tackle them. Ultimately, this research paints a picture of our moral beliefs. It leans towards a kind of moral pluralism, where we see lots of different virtues and vices influencing each other in varied ways, rather than a simple monism where everything boils down to one or two key traits, while there isn't one master virtue. The idea of master vices like cruelty really stands out. Now, like all studies, this one has its limits. The traits they picked might not cover absolutely everything out there, and the people in the study were primarily from the US. So, people from different cultures might have different beliefs about how virtues and vices connect. Imagine if loyalty means something different in another culture. That could change how they see it interacting with other traits. And what is next? The researchers were a bit limited in exploring the direct how behind these beliefs. For example, why do people think courage helps honesty? Maybe it takes courage to speak truth to power. Or why does humility help tolerance? Maybe it is about acknowledging you might be wrong, making you open to others. Future research could really dig into these specific causal stories. So, what can we take away from all this? It seems that our general belief is that being a good person in one way helps us be good in other ways. Virtues tend to facilitate each other, and vices tend to drag each other down. While there isn't a magic master virtue, we do see some vices like cruelty as particularly powerful in shaping our character. This research gives us a really valuable map of how we think about the complex landscape of our own moral character. What do you think? Do you believe that becoming more honest would make you more compassionate, or do you see more trade-offs in your own moral life? Let us know in the comments below, and if you found this exploration of moral psychology as interesting as I did. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more science breakdowns, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.